Going to have a look at some of the heavier riffs from the intro to Enter Sandman by Metallica, and hopefully at the same time I'll be able to satisfy a couple of requests that I've had. So I've done the sort of the clean part of the intro, the very first riff. I did a series on 10 easy riffs and this was one of them. I'll put a link below to that actual riff, the thing that it starts off with, but as a quick reminder, it was that clean riff, which is what the song starts off with. I did say in the other video that if people wanted to have a go at the heavier bits, just let me know and I'd do it. A couple of people let me know, so I'm going to do it. The second thing, the second request that I've been asked for, and I've not done this before on the channel, is when I'm doing a riff, or showing a riff, if I can try and get more of a better close-up with the video. Doing this is quite new to me still, so I'm still working out all the technical stuff, so I'm going to have a play through the parts that I'm talking about just as normal, and then when I get down into explaining it, I'm going to see if I can get a better close-up shot, so hopefully it'll make it easier for you to see what it is that I'm playing. It makes a lot of sense really. I should have thought of it sooner. You don't need to see all the background bump. It'd be a lot better for you when I'm showing you stuff that you can see what my fingers are doing. So I'm going to have a go at that. Hopefully that'll work out well as well. So the actual the heavy bit, the riffs that I'm talking about, I'll just switch my sound on and play through it. After that clean riff finishes, the band kicks into a heavy distorted part. There's actually, between that clean riff and where we got up to the part where they start singing, there's actually 4 riffs. I'm going to look at them all here because they're very closely connected, and it's a fantastic example, just from a learning point of view, of how you can start off a riff in a particular way and just change it and tweak it slightly to give a bit of a build-up feeling, and to give the riff a sense of travel, movement, as though it's going somewhere. So we go from a particular place to another place just by adjusting the riff slightly. So there's 4 riffs, and on each one it's just making a slight change to the riff, but it's quite the effect of it is quite pronounced when you play them in order and in context. Technique wise, I've just put a dirty sound on a distorted sound. That's quite important to make it sound like it should do as it was played by Metallica. If you don't have that facility, if you're playing an acoustic guitar, you can still use this as an exercise to practice. It just won't sound quite the same, but the technique is identical. A couple of techniques that I'm going to use that I'll put links, I've done explanations of, is I'm going to use a palm muting technique. I'll show you more of that later when I do the explanation of it, and I'm also using power chords for this. So they're 2 things. Metallica use them all the time. They're quite key to making the riff sound authentic if you want to make it sound like the record. So I'll start with a playthrough of those 4 riffs. I'm going to condense it down a little bit because there's quite a lot of repeats on it and I don't want to play it 100 times. I'll just do a few repeats, probably 4 of each one, so you can see the progression of how it starts in one place and goes to another place. So after that clean sound finishes, it immediately kicks into a heavy dirty riff like this. So there's 4 separate riffs there. I'll run through them one by one. I'll try and get a better camera angle first, and we'll take it from there. So there's 4 riffs here that make up this piece of music. For all of the riffs I'm going to use down picking with my picking hand. I'm not going to use alternate picking or strumming, so it's all down picking. When you're practicing, you might find it useful to, when you're counting, keep a count of 8 in your head. You'll see how it works when I start playing the first riff. But if you bear that in mind, whether you're counting or tapping your foot, whichever way, they work to an 8 count. These. So starting with the first one, I'll play it through and then I'll run through what I've played. So bearing in mind the 8 count, what I've played there, I've played my open E string using palm muting. So I'm not fretting anything, I'm just playing the string open, but I'm using palm muting with my picking hand. I'm going to play that 7 times, and then on the 8 for the final note, the final chord, I'm playing basically an F5 chord. So I'm playing 1st fret on my E string and 3rd fret on my A string to make up a little power chord. That's played open, it's allowed to ring out, there's no muting on that. So we've got 7 muted notes on the open E string, followed by the F5 chord played without any muting. I'll try and do it slowly. And that's repeated obviously to, I think it's 8 times on the original, but started off slowly just like I did, and then build it up to the original speed. From there we progress, and this is where we start to see the build up of how the riffs fit together. The second riff is actually quite similar, but there's a couple of extra notes added into it. So for the second riff, after that part, I'll play it normally and then I'll break it down. So I'm starting off just like the other one. I've got 2 notes on my open E string that are palm muted. After that, and then I'm going to play my 7th fret on my A string, followed by the 6th fret on my E string. I suggest when you're playing it the way I do it, I use my 3rd finger to play the 7th fret note and my 2nd finger to play the 6th fret note. That'll make a little bit more sense when we play the other riffs, but it's good to keep in that 5th position, as we call it, when we're playing that. So again, to start off with, there's 2 muted notes on the open string, then 7th fret on the A string, 6th fret on my E string, then that's followed by 3 more muted notes on my E string, and then again my F5 chord, the same chord that I used in the first riff. So up to speed. Third riff is just developing that last one ever so slightly. Starts off the same, we're just going to add, or we're just going to change one of the notes in the riff. So again, I'm going to start off with 2 muted open E strings, and then if you remember on the last riff I had my 7th fret on my A string, followed by my 6th fret on my E string. What we're changing here is after that 6th fret note, I'm going to play the 5th fret note on my E string, which is why it's important to have the hand position so that I've got this finger free to be able to do it. So from the start, after that I'm going to play 2 more muted notes on my open E string, and then my F5 chord again. So to put those bits together, up to speed. final riff pattern is probably the most memorable riff of the song. It opens up a little bit, there's not as much palm muting, a little bit more openness, a little bit more ringiness on the notes and the chords. I'll play it through. So I'm starting off with actually a little E5 power chord. So again, back to the power chords, I'm playing my open E string and making a little chord by playing also my 2nd fret on my A string, so those 2 notes. That chord I'm going to play twice. Then I'm going to go back up to the part of the pattern I was playing before, the 7th fret on my A string, followed by the 6th fret on my E string, followed by the 5th fret on my E string, and then finally a palm muted E string to finish the riff off. At the end of the riff, it changes slightly. There's a little bit more of a power chord muting part to it. So in context, so we're going to play power chords again, similar to the F5 chord where we played a 1st fret and then on the A string 3rd fret. The other 2 power chords that I'm going to use here are a G5, that's a 3rd fret on my E string, and a 5th fret on my A string, and 1 lower than that. If we move that chord down, I'll get an F sharp 5, which is a 2nd fret on my E string, and a 4th fret on my A string. Thing to be careful of in that last bit is the muting, to give it that chuggy, heavy, Metallica kind of feel to it. So there's a lot of muting taking place on those last ones that you need to be aware of with those power chords. So after that bit, I'm not muting that G5 chord, but other than that, the others are going to be muted. A mute on the open E string, followed by my F sharp power chord, muted E string, F sharp power chord, G power chord, F sharp power chord. Sounds a little bit twonky when I play it so slow. I'm muting a little bit heavily now, and the amplifier is obviously set to a heavy distortion sound. As you start to build up your speed, it'll sound a little bit better. So put the 4th riff, put all the bits of that together as they sound. So finally, I'll have a playthrough of all those parts at more or less normal speed, and hopefully you can see the build up of how I'm adding those notes each time and how it should fit together as a total piece.